You good?
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully everybody had a chance to get a quick break in there, and we're going to come up with the next one. So, Pedram, it's all yours.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want me to say anything more, but
I'm good to go.
yeah,
I'll take it.
I'll let
Appreciate
you introduce
it.
yourself and tell us all about your good stuff.
Very good.
So, you're up.
Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday here. Congrats to Darren and the founders of OISF. 17 years running is pretty impressive. This Dancing Queen song has been stuck in my head since last month.
It worked!
Since last month, I tell you, it's been stuck in my head. My name is Pedram Amini. I'm from Inquest. The name of my talk is Securing the Frontlines, How Users Are Being Targeted Today. Somewhat of a good extension, actually, on the last talk. So, quick introduction on myself. I was born and raised in New York City. I now live in Austin, Texas. I think officially this month I've become more Texan than New Yorker. And it's obvious because I accidentally used the word y'all the other day instead of you guys. I caught myself and I didn't even know who that was. When I'm self-taught, in the 90s, I started getting into computer hacking as a high school student. I was attending 2600 meetings. I got into soft ice for reverse engineering. I was using it to crack software, and also phone phreaking, red boxing, primarily to make free phone calls. This was in the dawn of actual payphones. There was no cell phones at the time, so that was the way you made phone calls. First job out of college was at a company called iDefense in the DC area, where I was part of the founding team for the Vulnerability Contributor Project. This was the first public vuln buying program, right? So any researcher in the world that found some zero-day, they could sell it to us. We would validate it, report it responsibly to the vendor, and of course they would get compensated for it as well. That company got bought by VeriSign, and that's what brought me down to Texas, and I got to start the zero-day initiative there, from scratch. This was a more altruistic approach because we didn't resell the information, just sold protections for it. And, handedly, one of my favorite times of my career, I got to work with thousands of researchers. I sat on 1,000 zero-day. It was a great time. And before I threw my life at bootstrap startups, which, will really age the hell out of you in a fast, short period of time, I did a lot of open source work. PyMA is a reverse engineering framework. Sully is a fuzzing framework. I wrote a book on fuzzing, and there's a now defunct community website for open reverse code engineering that I had also started back in 2005. First half of my career is all offensive, vuln dev, exploitation, low level. Second half has been more defensive. Jump Shot was a B2C play. I basically designed that to solve problems for my father. We booted Windows off of a Linux USB and cleaned it up forensically. Avast picked that up, and now for the past 10 years, I've been working on Inquest, where predominantly my passions are more around machine learning and at-scale threat hunting and threat intelligence. So, agenda-wise, at the highest level, there's three things that we can defend, right? There's hardware, there's software, and then there's wetware, people. And people are the most commonly targeted of the three. So this talk focuses entirely around the threats that users have been facing, that they're facing today, and that they potentially may face. We'll also talk on some just general hardening advice and dig into some analysis tools. So, first a historical look. All right, there are some beautiful exploits out there. You look at some of these like Pinkie Pie exploits, you go look at Pwn to Own, and to pop Chrome browser today, it takes like a chain of exploits. It's not just one vulnerability. It's not even a Stack Overflow, right? It's a combination of type confusions and memory leaks and information disclosures that when they put together are allowed to actually get in, bypass sandboxing restrictions and actually get you a remote code execution on like a Chrome browser. But despite the fact that there are so many beautiful exploits out there, realistically, most people are getting owned by fairly low-level tech. Right, most of these you will have heard of. Phishing, of course, carrier lures. I refer to just any kind of like document-based file-borne threat, whether that's like a malicious macro, malicious JavaScript, exploit, or, maybe even just a phishing link indirected inside of a document to reduce scanning. That's a carrier lure. Invoice fraud, the vast majority of attacks are financially motivated. Invoice fraud cuts right to the chase, right? Forget about give me your account and then later I'm going to try and monetize that. Just give me the money, All right, and this can be as simple as you've broken into a vendor or supplier's email and you start digging through their spool. You find a previous invoice, you change some information on it, you send it right back out to that vendor's trusted customer, and potentially they just pay it and like it's gone now. Right, so the game there is to reduce the dwell time between when the finance team gets that fake invoice and when they actually pay it out. AITM, or adversary in the middle, I thought this was a new technique. Apparently it's just the new PC way of saying man in the middle, but I figured out we can keep the old acronym with just machine in the middle, because that's what it is anyway. There's no human being there. It's just some software sitting in the middle. We'll talk about that in depth. That's probably the most nefarious of user-targeted attacks today. Toad refers to telephone-oriented attacks. These are highly interactive. We've already talked about some of this in earlier in the day today. Smishing is over SMS. And then these newer ones are in air quotes because I'm not quite comfortable with these newer terms, nor might I ever be. And quishing, we'll get into it. It's QR code related. While most people are getting owned by relatively low tech stuff, of course, there are some fancy things out there. And in general, I would highly recommend checking out the CISA known exploited vulnerability list. If you're running defense of an enterprise, that's probably the best government service that's come out. That KEV list is regularly updated, and you should definitely be patching what they are recommending that you patch. So, let's look at the historical formula for success. If we look at from the late 90s all the way to now, the predominant winner in terms of a tactic that is providing value for adversaries looks like this. You construct some novel carrier, exploit is optional. You either, buy or pwn/own infrastructure in the cloud. And then you seed your campaign with some mouse spam and you profit from there. So what does that look like? Threat sequence wise, stage one, you're going to see an email come in. So this might be your first ability to detect, to block, to tackle. There's that carrier document that's coming in. Perhaps a typical second stage pivot is going to be some outreach to, let's say, a compromised website. Someone has done some spray and pray WordPress vulnerabilities. A random coffee shop in Greece might be hosting the next stage payload for whatever Emotech campaign. Right? And this gives us a second detection point, because the way that you communicate, or the way that the malware is communicating with the second stage server, be it in the request patterns, cookie patterns, something, you might be able to detect that, secondary anchor point. Next is, and generally there's multiple pivots that go on. And partially the reason is because sometimes there's multiple groups of people. You might have one group of person that is entirely responsible for like mouse spam operations. They're casting this huge net. And then a totally different group of people who will then take what comes in from there and provide some kind of payload. So say perhaps, someone set up an AWS malicious server, and this gives us yet another detection capability, indicator, infrastructure. DNS and IP are known ones. SSL is a little bit less used, though pretty common today. JA3 and JA3S, these are SSL hashing for client and for servers that can be used. Say, for example, you've got some malware organization that is standing up the same infrastructure on new IP addresses all the time. You might be able to fingerprint the actual infrastructure behind it using the SSL fingerprint, or perhaps even a fingerprint on the technology stack that they're using. So, a third opportunity for detection. And finally, it's the delivery of the final desired payload, whatever that might be, a rat, ransomware, etc. And actually, when we talk about different malware groups, different malware campaign operators, sometimes what they do is it's very opportunistic. There's a generic kind of shotgun approach, shooting things out there. And then depending on who got compromised, the payload might be different. So is your system logged into an Active Directory domain? That might bring you a different payload, versus you have just some consumer grade system where, maybe that's going to get some stealer to get accounts to, further pivot. So depending on what is discovered in this process, that final payload may be different. And this is important to know during analysis, because if you're using some, standard desktop machine in a cloud sandbox to go detonate a sample, you may not get the actual payload that was targeting your organization. Ideally, you would use some kind of pivot through your own proxy. You'd have the actual gold image that the rest of the laptops and desktops are using in your environment. You want to replicate in your actual testing environment what your environment looks like, or you may not actually see what the final, payload is. So let's take a look at kind of the history of user-targeted threats in the history of time. And you'll notice these are very heavily file-borne oriented. If we look at the first major user-targeted virus that made the news, it was the Melissa macroviruses in 1999, major internet epidemic. Within hours, tens of thousands of PCs were infected. From there, we kind of got into the heyday of exploitation. Shout out to Georgia Ganinsky here, who was responsible for a myriad of disclosure during that time. But this is really where the exploits, reigned king and supreme. Later on, as the exploitation started dying down, Microsoft really started hardening these tools, at the compiler on the OS level, making it more difficult. The attackers moved over towards softer pathways that still provided value. They just went down to general Visual Basic macros. And this probably lasted the longest time, right? Up until, I would say that, let's say from like late 2000s to late 2010s, this is what was really the most dominant form of attacking users. And 2017 was a little blip on the radar. That was a rough year for the ecosystem of Microsoft. They had a couple of exploits that came out during that time. DDE is an amazing one. It takes literally like 6 seconds to make a DDE exploit. I can even show this to you. Where is this guy? So legitimately, this is how you would make a DDE exploit. You open Office, you click on a button in the ribbon, you click on add a field, and you put in the word DDE auto and whatever command you want to execute. Literally, less than 30 seconds, someone can make an exploit, for this vulnerability. I call these malware gifts, because they really are. And immediately when something like this happens, there is a campaign that will come out taking advantage of it. Equation Editor was another one. This thing was hard to patch. I think they patched it 3 times before they finally just removed the entire thing from the ecosystem. And we see that again last year when we talk about Felina. Equation Editor was also very easy to exploit and immediately got adopted by malware. Just a quick look, and I'll come back here. We had the heyday of exploits in the mid 2000s, and then 2017 kind of brought that heyday back, because those 2017 CVEs paid dividends for years. It took a long time for folks to patch it. And we know that because the malware actors and the volume of the threats that were targeting those CVEs were high and continuous. It took many, many years. And during this time, you'll see here, red means ODay discovered in the wild. So, we're playing reaction here. It's not like patch diffing that someone looked at to find a vulnerability. They found it. Everyone's reactionary. Blue is file-borne, so almost all of them. And you can see the little legend on the bottom for whether it's IE, Office, Windows. Those 3 years, malware was very heavily favoring these user-targeted CVEs. Beyond that, in 2019, we saw a shift from, and so, the DDE equation editor, that was like a little blip. Then it went right back to VBA macros. Then in 2019, we had XLM or macro sheets. This is an Excel 4.0 technology, right? It's 20 years old. To give you an example just of what it looked like back then. Where are you? This is what Excel looked like when macro sheets came out, right? It's a very, very age-old technology. But, to some kudos to Microsoft, they have excellent backwards compatibility. And so, where do we go? They have excellent backwards compatibility. So this is still supported even today in the most modern day versions of Microsoft Office. And the huge benefit here, outside of it being new attack surface, Microsoft provides something called AMSI. It's the anti-malware something service. It's an anti-malware scanning interface. So this allows your AV to get introspection into like what VBA is actually running when you open up an Office document. That does not exist for macro sheets. So now AV is completely blind to introspection-based analysis, runtime-based analysis. So this was a huge, everyone shifted over to macro sheets, and this lasted for a solid 2+ years. My team at Inquest was actually pretty instrumental in covering this. We were very ahead of the curve. and did a great job kind of releasing tools and blogs and documenting it all. Then moving on in 2022, again, we got some malware gifts. Felina is a vulnerability in Microsoft's support diagnostics tool, so MSDT, which has its own URL schema that you can get to, and I'll show this in a second. And then Dogwalk, also in MSDT, but a different pathway. And so these two vulnerabilities, while they came out in 2022, if you actually dig into them, and we've got a good blog on this, it goes back to like 2020. Right, this in typical Microsoft fashion, someone found a flaw, they reported it, and they were just shut down. They're like, no, this isn't a real vulnerability. Fast forward 2 years later when malware is actually using it, and now there's a big scramble to close that. But huge gap. And in general, this is a trend that you'll notice. You should pay attention to what security researchers are saying, because that really feeds a lot of malware operations. While there is going to be zero-day discovered in the wild, the vast majority, especially the threats that are targeting users, these are going to be malware actors leveraging tools and techniques that are coming out of the security researcher space. And let me show you the Felina real quick as well. So here's what that looks like. All right, however, it's a little bit hard to see on the projector, but basically this is the key here. You're able to actually pass PowerShell in. So again, super easy to exploit, right? There's no memory massaging here. There's no complexity of integer overflows. It's just execute my command. It's the equivalent of giving somebody a batch file and having them run that. In February of last year, Microsoft actually made the wise and somewhat draconian decision to disable Office macros by default. They would quickly reverse this decision in July because, the corporate world just could not tolerate this. But at that point, the malware actors had shifted. They're like, all right, we don't have this. Where do we go to next? And so they started moving into ISO files. This is CD images, LNK files, and stacking the two of them. Or you might have a zip with an ISO. Inside there's an LNK. And while this may seem like it was going to reduce the chances of success, and it will reduce the chance of success of detecting via sandbox, because you've got to go and click through all these things. The humans will do it. It's amazing how you will find somebody who's going to go through this process. I've actually seen documents where it's like a big screen and a huge arrow pointing at a tiny, like 1 pixel thing that they want you to click on in the middle. Because even sandboxes, when they're clicking around randomly, will potentially miss that component. If there's a big fat button, they'll get it. But some human will they'll sit there with a magnifying glass if they have to and inch that mouse over there to get it. Finally, we've got in this year, OneNote has become a new carrier format that we'll talk about. And there's a new CVE 2023-23397, which goes around TNF. We'll chat about this later as well in some more detail. Let me skip ahead now. So that's been the history. What do the current trends look like? Well, if you look at the reports, Verizon DBER is a really solid one. But if you look at any of them, HP's got one, Proofpoint's got good visibility. They've got annual reports as well. There's no doubt, while the numbers are different, there's just no doubt that the end user and email is the number one threat across the board. All right, you can see the numbers here from Verizon. One of the big changes is BEC, which is a hugely varying term. So many people use it for so many different things. It's hard to get like an accurate actual definition of it. I think the origin of it is the old CEO scam, but now they've just bastardized it to cover everything and anything. This has doubled. Verizon calls this a pretext. This is basically just social engineering, right? It's talking to someone, establishing a trust relationship, and then getting them to do something that they shouldn't be doing. And this comprises 50%, half of all social engineering attacks are going to be some threat like this. And unfortunately, these softer attacks that the folks the adversaries are switching to are a little bit harder to detect. If you've got a hard phishing link, if you've got malware, you've got something tangible to analyze. Whereas if you just have an email in a sea of emails in a 18,000 user enterprise, it's very, very difficult to find and filter that signal out of the noise, especially if the sender was actually a compromised account. Right? It's one thing to vanity spoof a CEO. It's another where the guy's account is actually compromised and someone's gone in there and they're sending emails on their behalf. And we'll talk about a more recent and detailed example of that. But let's dive into some of the different tactics that we see in the wild today. Probably the most nefarious is this machine in the middle. Right, and there's basically two ways, there's 5 or 6 different ways, but realistically, when you look at the ways that folks are doing it, there's really 2 major ways that two-factor is getting circumvented. One is just completely bypassing it, right? You use an OAuth-based authentication, you get a session token, and one of the more sneaky ways is device-based auth. So if you buy a new TV, you want to actually log into YouTube, for example, they will give you a code, and then you can go into your app and you'll go to put in the code, and now you're authenticated. So attackers will actually use that tactic. There's no TV in there, but you'll hit a phishing page where they're going through the device auth process, and then they're asking you to type in the code, and it's a much simplified version of it. They get a session token, and now they can go to work with that session token. They don't need the password. They don't need the two-factor. All they need is that credential token. The other way, and this is the most popular way today, is to actually sit in the middle, to proxy the session and get the session token in that fashion, right? So there's open source software that does this, EvilGenix 2, however you pronounce these other 2 ones. And now there's even services. So Evil Proxy and Naked Pages. And this is blown up. People who are actually providing this kind of machine in the middle as a service has exploded.
How much do they charge?
Actually, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the cost is on that. That's a good question. Something to the question for anyone in the audience is what do they charge for these services? And
maybe EDOS.
They probably can. That would be a good a good Samaritan kind of thing to put together. Not a bad idea either. What do they charge, and how can we take them down? This is what a generic one looks like. This is from Microsoft, one of their blogs, but pretty standard. You got someone in the middle there, so the password gets proxied through to the actual authentication service. We find it, comes back in, then the token goes out and across, and finally you've got a session cookie which is being utilized by the attackers. And generally, once they have that, they have automations. It's actually kind of hard sometimes and on some platforms to get somebody out once they've been in. If you've ever dealt with a compromised Amazon AWS account, for example, it's really hard. You can't just say go and validate all sessions. There are so many different types of temporary tokens that can be made, some of which you got to contact support to even clear or to enumerate. So it's non-trivial to get folks out once they're in. This is a graph from Proofpoint. You can kind of see the rise, and Evil Proxy here is the number 1 in terms of produced message volume. So either they have the most users or somebody who's paying the most money to use it the most heavily. Real world example. This is from, I think, the past week or 2. It was, attribution's a hard game, but it seems like this is Iranian actors. And they didn't use a reverse proxy in this case. They did an indirect. So you're going to an actual site that as you supply it, it's sending it back and forth. It's not actually a reverse proxy sitting in the middle. It's sending it and receiving it. And as soon as they got in, one of the neat things they did was they established persistence by adding an additional multi-factor authentication. This is, they used one-way SMS, and actually the phone numbers they were using were bound to Iranian actors, and so that's how they made that assumption. And what's really neat here, this is a new tactic, is they're using this AITM phishing to then get to second stage BEC. So this is the whole, let's break into someone's email and then let's use their email to start attacking all the people that they're talking to. Go through the spool, start finding the juicy threads that you can then take over. And what they do then, when they take over those threads, is because how does the adversary keep the actual inbox owner from seeing the message going on? They make rules. So these threads that they're hijacking, they add new custom rules to hide that from the user. Therefore, they can be in there having conversations with their trusted third parties, and they're not actually, the actual user is not seeing it in their inbox. Right? The send messages and the receive messages are automatically getting archived away out of the inbox. So that's a good detection point for us too. Looking at what rules are being added, what filters are being added for our users, because that could be a good sign of a more nefarious compromise. And then the second stage victim, of course, they're conned by someone who they trust. So that's definitely AITM, machine in the middle, definitely one of the most nefarious attacks now. It's very difficult for a lot of people to deal with. When I'm talking to prospects about email security, this is one of the top things that generally comes up. Another tactic that we're seeing is completely self-contained phish. Today, HTML is the number one malicious attachment by kind. And what they're doing is they're tricking users to entering credentials locally. So this screenshot, you have an HTML attachment, you double click on it, you get this. It looks like a document or spreadsheet here, and it's saying that, hey, you got to put in your credentials to see it. And what it's doing behind the scenes is it's not even going to a third-party service. It can use built-in JavaScript to either post to like a Telegram channel or use some service like Email.js to get that off to you. So it's completely serverless, right? But then the nice thing for us here is that as analysts, we get everything in one. Right? I don't have to go to multiple different sites to pull in all the different components of this campaign. It's all right there. Business email compromise, which again is a wide term. It started off with what I call vanity spoofing. Basically, say you register some random Gmail, but then you change your name to Pedram Amini and start, emailing my employees. If they respond to you, they're getting fired instantly. But other ways, this whole pretexting is just social engineering. This is a real one that I got. It is a solicitation for vendors to give proposals. We're talking about an oil company in the Arab region, which you think to yourself, they have money, right? People who are looking to make sales, they might get piqued by this. This yellow banner here, we dog food our email security product. Every time I see a new sender, the first time I get a message from somebody, it gets this big fat banner, so I know I've never talked to them before. And actually, I use this to filter my email. All first-time senders go to a special box. At the end of the week, I'll go in there and I'll start digging through them. Most of it is mass unsubscribe and block. Some of it is new business I need to deal with. By the time I got back to even looking at this, because it did catch my interest, I didn't immediately block it. 2 weeks passed. It's hard to see there, but it's May 31st and June 14th. So we're talking about in the past 6 weeks. I got another message similar, but also a first-time sender. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? It's because they have 2 different domains for launching this scam. They assume the first one got caught in my spam trap. They send the second one, and that's really what caught my eye. And immediately I started doing some investigation. I found even the actual company behind it exists. And they even have a little release saying, hey, beware. We know that there is scams going on, using our name out there. This is I got a frowny face here with a raised eyebrow because I really don't like this term. I don't even think it should have been coined. I won't even name who did it. But this concept of BEC 3.0 is really just phishing indirection, right? What we've seen typically is you get some kind of message, probably over email. You click it, you're now on the phishing site. Increasingly, there's now a shift to using one or more cloud storage or file providers or some form of redirection, right? And this is more difficult for us as defenders because now we got to go deeper. We can't just go look at the initial link that's inside the email. We need to go fetch that link and see what it may be linking to, perhaps even a second one from there. So that takes time. It's a lot of active work, happening. And you can't use tricks like, how old is the domain? What's the reputation of the domain? Because the domain might be drive.google.com. Nobody's blocking drive.google.com. And what you'll see is, and I'll show this, here's an attachment at the top half. We've got an email attachment. You click on it. And inside there's a link. You click on that. It takes you to this Raven platform. Raven is just a paperless billing. It's one of a gazillion services out there that you can abuse to do this. And again, it's got this link here purporting to be from Microsoft. View the password. And now the third level is, standard phish. And you can see this nothing special here. It's just some random domain that's set up there. It is on Windows.net, so it's a Windows service, but it is hard. Like every step of the way, there's nothing irreputable about the domains that you're traversing here. You've got to actually look at the content to figure out. Another example of indirection, if you look at the URL bar here, which is zoomed in the bottom, the email links to scripts.google.com. You click on that, and now you're getting to your phishing site. And again, on this one, they have a third indirection. It's on the same domain, but it's not until you get here that you see there's a form that's actually trying to collect information from the user. And there are tons of abusable services, right? There's oodles and oodles of these things, new ones coming out all the time. And there's just no way that you're going to be able to fully enumerate this. I'd never heard of Raven before until we saw that targeting one of our customers. Another tactic that we see is with telephone-oriented attacks. This is where there's a human malware operator. We were hearing the story earlier about the guy who had the grandma drive across state lines to get to the Bitcoin operator. Highly interactive. Mostly this is targeting your elderly. It's not so much of an enterprise issue. It certainly can be, but for the most part, this is kind of more like consumer grade problem. SMS phishing or smishing is another one. That term was coined in 2021, so I'm all right with it. The biggest benefit here is this limits SecOps visibility, right? Because who's got access to my personal phone? When you're talking to me over my corporate email, that's going over my enterprise security stack. It's going to produce alerts. We've got SecOps guys. But if you're able to get over to my personal side, suddenly the visibility is drastically reduced. And some of these are fueled by a pretty solid OS int. If we make a hire, as soon as they add themselves on LinkedIn, within a day, somebody is going to first, they figured out that they joined the company. They figured out their cell phone number. So they're buying data from different places. And, our CEO until 2 weeks ago wasn't on LinkedIn. So somehow they're able to figure out his name, probably from scraping the website. So now we're talking about 3 different sources. And then they're sending this guy an SMS. Now, unfortunately for them, the majority of them fall short there. They go from this kind of beautiful setup to, hey, can you send me a $500 Google Play card, which instantly raises the eyebrow of anybody because who's asking for that? Absolutely nobody. And this on the side is just an example of smishing. Everybody here has probably seen one of these in recent history. Some USPS delivery, something where they're trying to get you to follow a link and whatever.
Confirm or say yes or no.
Say again?
Just engaging with it at all.
Yeah, once you get on it, it could be a human, it could be an exploit, it could be phishing. It's once you engage with it, there's some attack pattern behind it. And in fact, I actually got one of these yesterday. Here's what I got yesterday. This one's over iMessage, which is unique. Normally I get them over SMS. This is the first one I got over iMessage, and they know that their TLD here is so crappy that it doesn't even get hot linked. So they even are kind enough to put in a little, hey, you got to copy and paste this thing into your browser. Yes?
There's sandboxes that will scan the box within the box, like SharePoint link, the PDF file. It's not redirected, but the user would actually have to click it. So it doesn't scan that PDF. It specify and in the sandboxes to go to that next level. Right?
So the question...
Correct.
Yeah. So the question is, are there any sandboxes that will follow these links and these chains? Sandboxes, some of them have interactive mode. So any run, which is a pretty popular one, though, there's a little bit of shadiness going on. I don't know what's going on with that company, but it's hard to find out who's there. It seems to be based out of Russia. It's very common in the industry among our practitioners to use any run because it's free. You can throw whatever you want at it, which also is a red flag. Like, how are you guys monetizing? It's not cheap to sandbox. But if you look at their interactive, they probably made it very popular. It's one of the first ones. And Joe Sandbox allows for interactive use as well. But to automate it is difficult. Because of that, where do you click exactly? It's hard the human, to replicate what the human is doing is difficult, and they make it difficult on purpose. Like the example I gave with clicking on the tiny 1 pixel link.
Seems like you have to focus on the cloud storage. The SharePoint links.
Yeah.
You have to automatically go to that next level.
Now you could, right? If you have, let's say you have your first layer static analysis and you get the URL, you can send the URL to a sandbox, get that report back, do static analysis on it again, and be like, all right, well, here's the next one that I want to pivot. But now we're talking about multiple detations. Detonations take 2 to 3 minutes just by design. It's 10, 15 minute, delay now. So it's difficult. It's a very simple, this is very asymmetric, right? Very simple change from the attacker's perspective. Pain in the ass for us on the other side.
At which point do you involve a lawyer?
So moving beyond that, this is a newer one, phishing. This is QR code. All right, instead of getting a link that you click on, you get a visual link that you can take a picture of. I masked this one out because this one, they go straight for the jugular on this. You click to take a picture of that thing. You go to this website. It tries to install a mobile device manager profile, which if you're not familiar with MDM, that's game over. Like, they have full control over your cell phone, which has all the keys to the kingdom. So that's, one phone, one picture and finger press away from giving away access to your entire cell phone. Again, benefit here is that I can send something to corporate email and then pivot to the cell phone. So now I'm outside the visibility of the SecOps team. So this is a newer tactic, QR code based phishing. Microsoft OneNote we mentioned earlier, the 2023 timeline. This is kind of like the carrier of the year. Someone figured out, hey, OneNote is pretty popularly installed along with the Office suite, and I can embed files in here. So let me start doing that. And actually, like many public threats, it started off with a red team post. If you look at one of the companies I do advisory work for is Exodus Intelligence. They are one of the premier exploit dev shops, also based out of Austin. One of the things I was helping them work on is this whole exploit predictability. There's scores out there like EPSS. Kenna had come out with something as well. There's a couple of them. If you look at any of them, all of them are super, super heavily biased towards, does a public proof of concept exist? All right. If there is an actual proof of concept, if there is a red team post, chances are soon to follow will be malware. So again, it's valuable for defenders to stay on top of these offensive posts, to look at what's coming out of conferences and to proactively, as soon as that was seen, that's the trigger point to start working on a layer that can actually start extracting these things. Now, in August of 22, this technique came out, and then in December, malware started coming out, and now it's a race, right? A reactive race where folks are writing analyzers to start dissecting these file formats so that people can use them in automation ways to actually dig through the OneNote and find these embedded files. And I'll talk about a very simple hardening method for this later. I swear to you, I'm not quishing you. That QR code will go to a blog. Nor should you.
QR code analyzers.
There are. Yeah.
It's just a bad practice. I have analysts that are trying to find out what the URL is using.
Yeah, there is, the OpenCV has, because the harder than decoding it is detecting it and extracting it. Because if it's in a big image, right, you got to go find it, isolate it, pull it. OpenCV will allow you to do that portion of it. And there's a plethora of libraries to do QR decoding. This is, if you've got an email security vendor, I would ask them, I know you guys are doing link analysis. Are you doing QR code link analysis? Because it will get to the human. And last bit from this year, this CVE, everyone here has seen windmail.dat. That is a transport neutral encapsulation format. Basically when you're sending an email through Microsoft, if there's a rich formatted version of it, it's going to get included. The original formatted version will get included in this this windmail. And this thing was titled Outlook Privilege Escalation Vulnerability. I don't really agree with that title. In a nutshell, what happens here is you send someone an email. It has a UNC path in this PID-lid reminder file parameter, and that forces a NTLM hash going off to an attacker-controlled server. Right? So, clever tactic. And this is one of the newest ones that people are using right now to own folks. Most prevalent email malware today up on the board. If you see something missing that you expect to see there, like Emotet, that's because it is deactive right now. And they're on summer vacation or something. But these are the threats. Yeah, they're French. These are the threats that or the malware campaigns, the operators that are common right now. What you would see if you were sitting on thousands of schools. And the most common encapsulations. Right? There's a variety of these things. I mentioned HTML is by far the most popular, but ISOs, links, zips, this is, and multiple layers of it. These are the most common paths. We'll talk about RSP in a second. Before we start taking guesses about what the future holds, we got to talk about, are we really any better? Because it's easy for us to look down on the average user and poke fun. However, this just happened 3 weeks ago, right? We're not immune from social engineering attacks. It just takes a little bit more nuance. Some guys came out there, or gals, adversaries, went out there and created a whole bunch of Twitter accounts and GitHub accounts, and they actually took faces from folks from Rapid7, right? So they're reusing actual practitioner information and credentials to trick folks to going to these GitHubs that would have a Python malware downloader. It would detect the Windows OS or Linux OS, a decent detection on the Windows payload, very poor detection on the Linux payload. So if you're elite Linux hacker, working with random exploit writers, and someone reaches out to you and they coerce you to go into here, you might get caught. This one was not as good, however, as a couple years ago in 2021, and this was tracked to North Koreans. These guys it was a legitimate vulnerability. It just was non-exploitable. It was a local privilege escalation in Windows. And if you dug into it, you would see this is impossible to exploit, but not to throw away that work they were doing, like, hey, we can use this. So they took the exploit, and this is much more nefarious than that previous tactic that we covered, but the newer tactic. They made a poison Visual Studio Code project. Nobody is looking at the VS Code project. You shouldn't be opening people's VS Code projects, but nobody is analyzing these things. So once they got a little trust thing going, like, hey, I've got this LPE, I don't know how to exploit it. Maybe you can help me out with it out of the kindness of your heart, or maybe if you can help me exploit it, we can split the bug bounty. You open that Visual Studio Code, and all the stack traces they're showing you, all the code they're showing is legit. Right? It doesn't take much to buy trust here. They're showing you their wares. Right? You can see, like, wow, this is neat, and they can give you the trigger, and you can trigger it. Once you open the Visual Studio Code project, you're popped. And the Secure Elite is the company that they were saying they were coming from. And I actually had a friend who fell victim to this. Major pain for him to back out of it. But, bottom line is, we're not immune. You must be, you got to have an eye open. All right, so let's confer the crystal ball, right? Where are we going? We're definitely going to start seeing heavier use of email thread hijacking. Right? If I've got an active dialogue going on with somebody, there's a much higher chance I'm going to continue that dialogue versus starting a new one. Like that first time sender banner is not going to show up on an email thread hijacking. We're definitely going to see an increased indirection over free service providers, over paid service providers as well. I'm already seeing a ton of this today. It's really starting to ramp up. Password protection for email attachments will drastically reduce analysis capability. I mean, literally all you have to do is take a file that has high VT detection, throw it into a password protected zip, put that password in the actual email and send it to your target. The detection rates drop down to the floor. Obfuscate that password a little bit by putting spaces in between it, or if it's HTML, you've got like black characters and white on white. So now the machine doesn't see it the same way that the human sees it, and that's even dropping further. Right, so these tactics are very effective, but still the password is there inside of the email body. I'll get to you in 1 second. Now what we're seeing is folks are they're separating them. Right, so they'll send the password protected attachment, and then they send the password in a subsequent email. I have not seen this yet, but it was already previously predicted as well. You're going to start seeing this cross the mediums. Right? If they know my cell phone number, which obviously they do from the previous OSINT example, then they can send me the password over SMS. And typically, if I'm working with my colleagues and sharing a key, I do split medium as well. I'll give them the encrypted thing on Slack. I'll shoot them a text with the password, and then I'll delete both of them. So this cross medium attack is surely one that's going to come up. Just this week, phishing over chat. Microsoft Teams, apparently by default, allows external access. So folks are able to come and just talk to your teammates through Teams. And just this week, I think like 6 days ago, this Teams Phisher tool was released that automates the whole process. All right, so you can guarantee you in the next couple of weeks, that's going to become, a headline grabbing thing because it has, some red teamer has put out a tool that's going to be very easily adopted. Go ahead, there was a question.
So I saw this news article where someone published this about Microsoft scraping your emails and contacts for passwords and unzipping password protected files to scan them for malware. And there was one researcher who was keeping their stuff on Microsoft's cloud services. They got his passwords from an email and deleted all his samples.
Microsoft did that?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. The statement from the audience was that Microsoft is doing some of this mining on the spools to pull the passwords out. And I guess he was actually had like malware samples in here. So when they cracked it, they removed all the samples because they detected it as malware. Interesting. You know what he should do is put those passwords with a little bit of white space in between it. See if Microsoft can catch that. Teams, by the way, is used has 90% adoption in the Fortune 100. If you do a just like DNS crawl on the Fortune 10,000, you'll see that the vast majority, over 80% are using Teams. Although for most people, Google G Suite or Google Workspace, whatever they're rebranded to this week, That's the more common one overall. But if you go look at the actual high value targets, it's all Microsoft and Teams.
Are they doing anything for Zoom as well?
You know, I haven't seen, the good question was about Zoom. I haven't seen much on that.
Because, I mean, during COVID, that was the big one.
Yeah.
Zoom, right? Everybody had Zoom meetings, and now, Teams has kind of taken over and people meet.
Zoom is still the number one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have meetings with folks all the time, and sometimes it's Teams. Most times it's still Zoom, but I haven't seen much on the Zoom radar.
Zoom did all the same stupid things that WebEx did. And from a marketing standpoint, for their salespeople, they basically set up company name WebEx, company name Zoom, so that they could easily provision or have it already provisioned. So when they got contacted, you could go demo it.
Right.
So you'd be, I mean, that's another exercise. Maybe it gets the next status page.
I did see, I think just this week, they released a new feature where, when you have a chat with a company through Zoom, if you're both on Zoom, now there's like a lingering, it stays. Before it was ephemeral. The meeting started and ended and the chat notes could be saved to a text file, but now you have something so you can continue the dialogue afterwards. Maybe that opens up some capabilities.
Right, and I just discovered something a couple weeks ago. I don't know if it's got utility or not, or legs, but it's called Loom.
Loom is a video recording thing, yeah.
I'm like, okay, let's.
It's for quick demos and things. It records you and you kind of like one click, save, record, share.
I thought that was a retro LucasArts game.
Loom?
It was.
So the part of Zoom is that they spend a lot of time focusing on their phone system.
Mm.
They're really ramping up on replacing voice phone systems.
Interesting. Yeah. We've covered some of this in the previous talk and just in general conversation here, but ML will certainly improve social engineering. It already has. We discussed these generative AIs. Sometimes they're sourcing social media. Grandma's getting a call from somebody in jail, car accident, whatever the urgency is. LLMs are certainly going to make pretexting and phishing more believable. They can carry full dialogues without having a human interaction in there. And fully automated dial centers. We all know of like the dial centers in India where there's hundreds of people, calling up and scamming folks. Like these are the general toad actors trying to sell you antivirus, calling random people. Imagine when this is fully automated. And we've already seen this actually. AARP did a bulletin on it. There is someone did some deep digging to it, but a former PAC that was used for fundraising, whoever was behind that figured out like, hey, I can do this for nefarious purposes too. And they have very believable sounding voices, people telling jokes, like good salespeople calling and raising money for first responder donations. Right? That's a very easy heartstring to tug at, and something like $3 or $30 on average that they're collecting actually goes to the donation. So it's not quite fully illegal, but it's terribly shady, and you're going to see an explosion of this because you've just lost. The barrier to entry to here is hiring people, putting them in a room, and getting them on phones. That's going to be completely automated, not too terribly long, and it will sound good, right? The generative AI is quite decent. Yeah, and basically, folks will be having conversations with machines. At some point, I don't know exactly when, but another carrier class will arise. Another file-borne threat. TNF and OneNote this year. I'm already seeing this Microsoft build responder files or response files, RSPs. These are a proxy to DLLs. This is something that's coming up right now. And don't forget that it's trivial to encapsulate files within other files. So if you really want to control attack surface, you have to have granularity. You can't just look at that outer container. It's what is in this stack, what is in these Matryoshka dolls, these Russian nesting dolls. Also, finally, completely out of a different genre, H.264 it's everywhere. It has been implemented by everyone, and there's maybe like 36 vendors that have implemented H.264 decoding, and some of it is hardware. So you're not updating. There's no patch for this. But it is an extreme pain to research H.264, right? These are bit streams. The tiniest change changes everything moving forward. I've seen people banging their heads on, virtually on Twitter, complaining about, because there was an exploit in the wild and no one could analyze this thing because it was so hard to make a manipulation and actually tool this thing. It was difficult to do. Well, that changed. Some researchers out of UT did all the heavy lifting. They wrote like 50,000 lines of Rust to manipulate H.264. They call it H.264. And they wrote a white paper. They found a whole bunch of 0-day in one stack, right, with their work, kind of a proof of concept. But they're going to be releasing this in the next month, and I guarantee you this will result in, it'll take some time. This isn't like Teams phishing where I'll have a week of adoption, but this will get picked up by all the nation states, and you're going to have a slew of H.264 vulnerabilities. It's just going to be very difficult to patch and defend against. At least that's my sentiment on it. I saw this team talk at Recon in Montreal, and that was, for me, was one of the biggest threats that I've seen this year. So some hardening advice. Right. The best thing you can do, and just quick time check. We have a little bit,
couple minutes.
but we started late too. I'll go fast.
Yeah.
I already talk fast. I'll get there. So attack surface reduction.
Accent kick in.
It does. Yeah. The best thing you could do for your users is to reduce, attack surface, right? And there's some simple things like by default, PDF allows JavaScript. Who needs that? Absolutely nobody for the most part, right? That should be a GPO regedit pushed across the enterprise. No need to have PDF default to having JavaScript enabled. Do you need Java? Right? That's a fairly decent attack platform and gives someone a whole new payload virtual environment to run on. Can you remap script files like the HTAs, JS, JSE, PS1, WSF? Can you remap these to Notepad? How many of your users actually need to be running script files on their desktop? Do disk image files need to be mounted? Like, who's mounting ISOs? Right, folks in this room might be, but your average user has no need to mount an ISO or any kind of disk image on their desktop. Attachment kinds. And again, next bullet here, you got to beware of file layering, but do we need to be sending ISOs in emails? Like, there's just no reason for that. That's not a commonly traded file. So let's remove that from the menu of options. And I would say disable this team's external access now, if for no other reason. No joke, this week I saw a recruiter use it for the first time. So, if you don't want to get sold car insurance through your Microsoft Teams, you're going to want to disable this. I promised a workaround for OneNote. You can actually disable the ability to embed files in OneNote. So if you want to still allow OneNote files to move around, but you don't have to worry about it being a container, here's a registry setting you can put up there across the enterprise, and now we have essentially defanged OneNote as a carrier format. So all attack surface reduction, removal of things. And last thing but not least, some analysis tools and tips. I'll fly through this. I mentioned this geofencing, right? Good attackers are not going to serve the same payload to different people. So if you are trying to do analysis, you want to be sure that you are doing your analysis from the same geofence that you are being targeted under. We mentioned the decryption capabilities must span emails now, potentially different mediums in the future. SWOL obfuscation. This is things that are highly compressed. So imagine like a 2 meg file, but when you decompress it, it becomes like 300 megs. That becomes very easy to transmit, easy to mount locally, right? And this is common for disk images, very difficult for security tools. Because just the amount of time it takes to decompress that and write 300 megabytes to disk is going to eat their time and potentially eat the window of time that they have to complete their analysis. So, and there are tricks for here. You can look at headers and be like, what does this look like size-wise packed and unpacked to just disqualify some of these things off the bat. Ideally, you want to find a way to automatically peel away these layers. There's just so many combinations of them. If you don't have some automation, you're going to be spending a lot of time on this trite. Right, this asymmetric. And VHDX, I would check for support. It's, version 2, Microsoft specific of VHD images. It allows for mark of the web bypass. And if you take the same malware sample, throw it in VHD, throw it in VHDX, upload them both to VirusTotal, there's a drop in detection capability. Some folks just haven't haven't caught up to that newer format yet. Finally, on some tools, we launched labs.inquest.net completely free as in beer. It's got a couple different components to it. This was launched in 2019 as an output of an experiment where, the premise was, can we find 0-day sitting in VirusTotal prior to it actually being, discovered in the wild and reported on? And we found 3 examples using tooling that we had built, and then we released some of it by way of labs.inquest.net. So deep file inspection database, bunch of common carriers. We have almost 4 million files there. It's all Office documents. Soon we'll add PDFs as well when we release our PDF machine learning model. The idea here is to poke bad guys in the eye by providing, dissected data to community researchers. They can go find something that maybe has low AV coverage. Then they'll go pull some indicators, and they can go see, is it in RepDB, which is, these are reported indicators, aggregation from like 25 plus sources, almost 20 million indicators there. So has this been seen and reported already? If not, then you go to IOCDB. Is it being talked about? We're scraping Twitter, RSS, GitHub, a bunch of other services. So you might find a researcher who is talking about an indicator that you're looking at. Perhaps you want to collaborate, or perhaps you want to move on. Someone's already pulling on that thread. Send your human cognition somewhere else. There's a lookup tool. Who is Dyn DNS, a Majestic Million. This is the top million websites. Alexa Top Million was paid for. What is it called again? The Trelco thing? Oh, what is that? The one that you guys just talked about. From the EU in your talk, you have the EU list. Tranco, right? That's another one. Same basic thing. It's the top most visited million websites. So you put a domain name in there, get the age, see if it's a dynamic DNS provider or not, of which there's hundreds of them that we had to enumerate, and see if it's in the top million or not. There's some YAR tooling for detection engineers. I'll cover this in a second, and also I'll cover Trastero project and make a quick new announcement. So these YAR tools are for shortcuts for some complicated patterns, right? Especially in RTF, you can have mixed case hex data, and so this will just take a shell, take a string, and give you the mixed hex case version of it. So great for RTF, right? This is taking PowerShell, and whether it's capital P, lower W, capital R, it's going to give you the regex. It's going to match that in hex for whatever the casing combination of it is. Another one, this is, I also use RTF as an example here. This is converting a string match into a trigger for performance benefits. If you're running thousands of YAR rules, performance is important. So this is an early exit where instead of having to evaluate all the strings, if you don't see the first couple bytes have RTF, don't run my RTF signatures, on them. This one is pure magic. It was very difficult to write. It's very hard to explain because people haven't made a big deal about it. But what we're doing here is you give me a regular expression. I will give you a regular expression that will match any content that regex that you provided matches, but in base64 format. So if there's base64 that has PowerShell, Pedram, Amini, and then hidden, this will match it. Now this will get silly fast. So you got to be careful. All right? That's obviously unusable, but it is a very, very powerful tool. We use it regularly. Of course, we will decode base64 as well, but there's huge value in being able to do, on the wire introspection without having to pull it out and actually decode it. And some people don't have that layer, so you can write YAR signatures now that will match here into base64. And just last week, released another tool. This is for, you take an IP address, easy to put that in a regex. IP range, also easy. Weird CIDR block, not so easy. So got tired of doing this, and now you just give it a CIDR block or a bunch of CIDR blocks, and you'll get regexes that match it. I'll skip over this. You guys can see that on the website. Although one thing to mention is we are measuring, and have been now for over 2 years, we take all the malware from the wild, and I literally pass it through a bunch of accounts I control on Microsoft, on Outlook.com, on Gmail, on O365 with E3, O365 with E5. And so we're comparing and contrasting who's blocking what. And, for me, I get to keep the tooling sharp by focusing on what is bypassing the major mail providers. I can't compete if I'm looking at things that Microsoft is already good at. I can compete if I'm looking at things that they're not so good at. And just in the past week, for the first time, Google is now offering 2 layers as well. Microsoft has always had the E3, E5 layers. Now there's something similar-ish with Microsoft, and their most expensive one has a sandboxing capability. So I'll be adding this and getting a feel for how good that is at reducing their gap. And so finally, the last thing is, this is not yet released on Labs, but I hacked on it all week to get it functional for anyone who wants to play with it. Get in touch with me afterwards and I'll give you access to it. But built this thing called Geppetto. We're not the first people to do this. It's a headless Chrome with Puppeteer, right? Browsers are complex. It is hard to simulate what a browser is doing, so just use the browser. Right, if you're going to analyze a link, send a headless browser to it. And there's basically 4 things that we're pulling from here. What's the redirection trace, right? There's server-side redirects, meta redirects, script redirects. If you hit a link and it takes 17 of these, you'll get a list of all the different redirects and it'll take you to the final site. When you get there, you're going to get the HTML and text contents. That's like what's under the hood. But then also you get a fully rendered screenshot. This is, we'll do things like scroll to the bottom, wait a little bit, ensure all the things are loaded, then take a full screenshot OCR. So you get to see what's under the hood and what does the user see. So that offset is valuable. And finally, dhash, which is a perception hash. What does it look like? That gives you image similarity. I use this, for example. I stream a lot of things to Slack. I'm pretty sure Slack is losing money on us. I cannot believe how much data we push through Slack. It's basically my SIM. But anytime there's a new image, because it has a new dhash, it streams to my Slack and I'll go see it. I'm like, oh, that's neat. That's something new. Let me go check it out. How it works, because there's no UI to it yet. I think it's basically 3 calls. Curl to analyze something. It'll give you back a URL hash. Then you can go ask for a report. This is too big to show. So I took some of the things out of it, classifications. Is it banking? Is it government? Is it shipping? Is it login? Is it protected? Bunch of different classifications there. What's the dhash? That's the perception hash. On the HTML, we're pulling out the functions, the entropy, the DOM elements, and these are all going to be valuable for machine learning models, right? These become features, or they become source for features. There's lookup information on the underlying domain that comes from Inquest Labs. What are the name servers, registrar? When does this thing expire? When is it updated? OCR and text, length, entropy, etc., and the trace log. What does the redirection trace log look like? And finally, you can also grab the full-blown screenshot. Here I'm pulling it out and passing it to ImageCat. So this is a Bank of America fish that, this was the example. So not officially released yet, but happy to collaborate with folks here. Feed me challenges, show me something that's hard to do. We're actively working on this thing and adding new features to it. The Tranco list, that's what it was called. I wrote it down on this one. The other thing I've done with this is I took the Majestic Million and I wrote a crawler that just went and hit all the sitemaps, looked for logins as candidates. And so I went and I spidered with Geppetto all the logins for the legitimate top million. That way I get a corpus of data of what real logins look like, to compare and contrast against my corpus of data of all the fish ones. And there's a couple of different fish sources like Fish Stats, Fish Hunt, Fish Tank, OpenFish. All of that is being fed into this tool hourly. We're collecting something like 10,000 new fish a day. And so this data set has just been building now for a couple of weeks. Thank you very much for your time. You can get in touch with me on any of these mediums. Appreciate it. Open up to any questions.
Go back to the slide where you get the team's registry entry.
You mean the OneNote?
Yeah, no, the OneNote.
Yeah. Where are you? Here it is.
In general, are these slides going to be available?
Yes, I will put them on.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.